that we could get started. Let's see who's joining us. A few people. So today we're going to be talking about macros or macronutrients. I'm Miriam, by the way, HDH dietitian. And since we had so many questions about nutrient distribution last class, I thought that this might be a good topic for us to go through. So let's get started. Feel free to ask questions. Okay. There we go. So macronutrients, basically think of macro as large and micro as little. So macronutrients, those are big nutrients, and they constitute the bulk of your diet, and they supply energy and a lot of essential nutrients. So what we're talking about is carbohydrates, proteins, and fats mainly. There's also some macro minerals in water that are deemed macronutrients. So what, in terms of calories, carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram, and proteins are the same. They're 4 calories per gram. And then fats, on the other hand, are 9 calories per gram. And if you're curious, alcohol is 9 calories per gram, or 7, I'm sorry, 7. So let's get through the carbohydrates first. What are carbohydrates? So they're basically they're broken down into glucose and other monosaccharides. Mono meaning one, and saccharides meaning sugars. And so basically carbohydrates are there to increase the blood glucose levels and supply energy. Simple carbohydrates, when you hear simple, basically what that means is they're very small molecules. They're generally those single sugars or monosaccharides. They could also be disaccharides, so di meaning 2, and they increase your sugars, your blood sugar, pretty rapidly. Complex, on the other hand, now these are much larger molecules, and they're broken down into then monosaccharides or even disaccharides. Complex carbohydrates will increase your blood glucose levels, but they will at a more slower rate. Glucose and sucrose are simple carbohydrates, and then starches and fiber are complex. So when you hear a starch or something with fiber, that'll be meaning it's a more complicated molecule. Something else about carbohydrates, when you hear glycemic index, it's really the measure of how rapidly you're consuming that carbohydrate and how quickly it's entering your bloodstream, therefore making your blood sugars rise. So, when you hear about, oh, that's why bananas are so full of sugar, they have a lot of fructose in them, but because they have fiber, they will be a little bit slower to absorb than, say, if you drink juice or had some candy, because fruit, when it's in its whole form, it's going to have the fiber and the pectin. And then this is why also it's really helpful to eat foods in combination with each other. So that way they're not absorbed super quickly. So generally you're eating a carbohydrate with a fat and a protein. Okay, on to proteins. So proteins are broken down into peptides and amino acids, and they are required for tissue maintenance, replacement, function, and growth. If the body is not getting enough from enough calories just in general, protein actually can be used as an energy source, but it's definitely not ideal. So as the body uses dietary protein for tissue production, there is a net gain of protein. It's called a positive nitrogen balance. So how we can tell we're protein malnourished or getting too much is actually, it comes out in our urine, the nitrogen balance. We can test for that. So during like really high, say intensity exercise or starvation, or you have an infection or a burn, this is called a catabolic state, meaning a breakdown. More protein is actually used for energy. So there's 20 amino acids. That's what makes up a protein. 9 are essential amino acids. They cannot be synthesized. They can't be created in the body. And so they have to be obtained from the diet. All right. What else? So we'll go over protein needs a little bit more down the line in this seminar. And you'll be surprised at how little you need. All right, now onto fats. Fats now are broken down into fatty acids and glycerol. So they are required also for tissue growth and hormone production. Saturated fatty acids, common in animal fats, they are actually solid in room temperature. That is why we worry about the quantity, because as they're going through our vessels, think of something really hard and strong going through the vessels. It's going to create more dings and cuts and scrapes, and that creates more inflammation in our body if we have too much. So that is why we really need to worry about the quantity of saturated fat. We're really talking about the molecular structure of it. Plant fats are definitely more of the way to go, except for palm and coconut. We need to really watch the quantity with those, because they're about 80 to 90% saturated, meaning they are solid at room temperature. Now, partially hydrogenated fats, they are unsaturated, but they have kind of a weird structure to where they act as a saturated fat, and they're inflammatory. They increase our harmful cholesterol and they decrease our helpful cholesterol. So that is why when you see partial hydrogenation in ingredients, or you hear trans fats, we actually need to avoid them at this time. They're banned in food supply now, partially hydrogenated, because we found that they're just so killer, but we're still finding them in products. So you just have to read ingredients to see if you see any hydrogenation. Now, essential fatty acids, there's linoleic, so N6, and there's an omega-3. There's 2 linoleic acids. When you hear omega-3, I'm sure you think, wow, it's so wonderful. It is. So omega-3 is like what we need more of. Omega-6 is what we need less of. And then fish oil, that's another omega-3 source. This slide is just to show you, basically on the left side, macronutrients, so the big nutrients, the carbs, fats, and proteins. And then just on the flip side, what micronutrients are. They are the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals that are in our foods. And micronutrients are predominantly in fruits and vegetables. So when you hear a lot of nutrition experts talk about nutrient density, this is really what we're talking about. We are talking about the micronutrient density. Okay, so just kind of a overall summary. Fats are used for your body, and they're stored as triglycerides. Protein is used for the body or stored in liver as glycogen. And then carbs, they're used for energy or stored as glycogen. So the body's so amazing because it's always gearing up for survival times. Here are some food examples of what carbs are, proteins are, and fats are. And then where you see kind of like the overlapping circles, that's where the food item actually has both carb and protein, or fat and protein. So just take a little look-see here. That's why, so as a vegetarian, I have a lot of lentil pasta, chickpea pasta, edamame pasta, because it it contains a lot of protein and it has carbs in it. So it's like double whammy. It's an easy one. And then I add some little olive oil. That's my fat. Some veggies. Good to go. All right. So here is basically, this is called the AMDR, and it's a really studied, widely accepted window of macronutrient recommendations. So as a dietitian, I mean, this is kind of the gold standard of reference points that we use. In nutrition counseling sessions, I will vary this a little bit based on someone's needs and lifestyle. But I really stay within the ranges. For protein, I don't usually go below 15% for people because it really helps with satiety, meaning it helps with their fullness. And then for fats, you know, I would say 30% is usually where I aim. And then carbohydrates, depending, this is a huge range. If you are exercising every day and you exercise intensely, you kind of want to be on the upper end. I would say minimum 55% carbohydrate. And then if you're really sedentary, you don't really exercise very much, you don't move a lot, you can go down to 40% to 45%. So I play around with that a little bit based on someone's life.
Hey, Miriam.
Yes.
We have someone asking what your thoughts on a keto diet with supplements is.
Yeah, so keto diet is not how I'm recommending these ranges. Keto diet would be, let's see, they're like 70% to 80% fat. And then maybe like 10% protein, 15% protein, and then like less than 5% carbohydrates. So that's already really imbalanced based on all the research out there. So I actually would not recommend a ketogenic diet to begin with. And secondly, supplements aren't going to cut it. They're not going to give you enough fiber and micronutrients. Like you can't absorb from a multivitamin or a supplement what you would from food. Fruits and vegetables, you can never replace with a supplement. It can catch some deficiencies, but really severe deficiencies. So it's definitely not recommended. And behaviorally, it doesn't have a high compliance, meaning you won't stick with it past maybe a year or two. So then you kind of can do the yo-yo dieting phenomenon where you pack on more fat and your body is not trusting you to just take in food when it needs. And you're missing a lot of fiber in the ketogenic diet. And fruit is one of the issues on that diet too. And whole grains, you get so many great B vitamins and energy from your grains. Hope that answered the question. Also, try and have an intense workout when you're on keto. I like to work out intensely, like HIIT training. So I would probably keel over if I was on that. Okay, so how to calculate? Oh, is there another comment question?
Yeah, she's asking, so what do you think about anti-inflammatory diets to help autoimmune illnesses?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Huge fan. The anti-inflammatory eating way is basically what I promote most of the time. It's a lot of fruits and veggies. It's the healthy fats coming from fish, flax, avocado, chia. And then it's super low, like no meat. And you're doing whole grains. So I'm a big fan of that. It really, really helps with any autoimmune condition.
And then we have one more question. Sorry, Amir.
Oh, sure. No problem.
So Melissa's wondering what your thoughts on meal replacements are. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Melissa, but I'm assuming meal replacements as in like smoothies or juicing. I don't know if that's what you mean, Melissa. I don't know if you want to elaborate.
I mean, like Soylent, Healed, and other like meal replacement that are trendy now.
I didn't hear that brand. What was that brand?
Soylent.
Soylent. You know, you can always send me the label. I've never heard of that.
Okay.
I definitely would. So a smoothie is one thing. You, Lenny, that was a good point. Smoothie is great because you're just blending the whole fruit or the whole vegetable, the whole food item, and hopefully consuming it quickly because it oxidizes so rapidly. But now if you're meal replacing with a processed juice or smoothie that's been made and is shelf stable, then you're missing out on quite a bit of nutrients and fiber. And also, you're not getting, we start digesting in our mouth when we start chewing. So you're not getting like healthy bacteria. You're not getting that satiety that you would from a meal that you're chewing and eating. So it depends. Like, I mean, I would say breakfast, like sometimes I just do a smoothie because it's quick and, you know, you can take it on the go. But I wouldn't exceed, you know, more than one meal doing that. Okay, so how to calculate your own carbohydrate, protein, and fat needs. You can start by tracking your total calorie intake. You can use My Plate or MyFitnessPal. They're both apps. You can just see what you're currently intaking. And if you're maintaining weight, then that's like the calories you need to maintain your weight. And then, so for example, if it was a 2,000 calorie a day, then you would take the bottom percent, then divide the number by the amount of calories per gram. So remember, protein is 4 calories per gram, protein is the same, and then fat is 9 calories per gram. So this would be an example of the ranges based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So it's a pretty big range. Okay, so let's talk about exercise nutrition. So pre and post workout. This is a question that I was getting a lot last class as well. So pre-workout macronutrients should really be easily digested and include simple carbs. So those mono and disaccharides we talked about. But if you have 90 minutes prior to your workout, you should consume 1/3 protein, 1/3 carbs, 1/3 healthy fats. And your post-workout meal should really contain mostly proteins and carbs to increase that muscle protein synthesis and restock the glycogen levels in your liver and in your blood. So a pre-workout meal, ideally it's about 1 to 4 hours, depending on how your body tolerates food and like how intense the exercise is. You have to experiment a little bit. But some suggestions of pre-workout fuel is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Hopefully it's on whole grain. Hopefully you're getting peanut butter that doesn't have added sugar and oils in it. So you're getting the protein, fat, and carbs all in that one meal. Greek yogurt with berries, you're getting protein in the yogurt, you're getting carbs from the berries. Oatmeal, low-fat milk, and fruit, same thing. So this is just the example. When you get closer to that exercise time, you want to switch mainly to just carbs. So if it's like, I don't know, 45 minutes to 30 minutes to 20 minutes to 15 before your exercise bout, you might just want to stick with carbs if it's a high intensity workout. Now, post-workout, you really want to focus on making sure you are getting not just carbs, but protein into your body. You have to replenish that glycogen. You'll really feel you won't feel as recovered, and you won't build your muscle as efficiently. And remember, muscle burns a lot of calories, so it really helps with weight management. It helps with tone. It helps with like your posture. It helps with insulin. So it's really helpful to have muscle. A post-workout meal, it could be a smoothie. So if you didn't want to eat, if you didn't feel like it, you can just blend something up. Make sure you're having that carb and protein combination. Here's some snack and meal ideas I just talked about with the combination. If you needed a meal, really within that hour after you work out, ideally 30 minutes, you are getting at least 150 to 200 calories of carb and protein. I'm not super great at that, so I make sure I have a good meal within the hour. If I do a lot of resistance training, maybe I'll sip on a smoothie, but then really have my meal within 45 minutes. Now, athletes typically eat more than average than a non-athlete, which makes sense. Often you hear that more is better. It's not true with protein. It's a misconception. Iron is actually the most common micronutrient that's missing in the diet from athletes. So you might want to be checking in the blood work if you're an athlete. And then more carbohydrates, like I mentioned before, are going to really help the athlete's performance and recovery. But fat and protein should really be the same. It's really the carbs that should be increased. So this is just a summary of the exercise nutrition portion I talked about. Your body has to have carbs to fuel your working muscles. You're really going to be at risk for injury and fatigue and poor muscle growth if you don't have enough carbohydrates. And protein is there to help and rebuild. Carbohydrates are really the truck that brings the protein to the muscles that need, repair and recovery. So getting that combination is really important. And then never try anything new. Say you have game day or race day. You want to always practice with the food that you were using to train. And here are references. And so I want to leave the rest of the time for just open forum and questions. I don't know if you wanted me to go back to anything. I know the calculation probably stumped a lot of people. Let me check the comments.
Mir, this is Mona. I
Hi.
wanted to ask if there was a difference for women and men. Like, should we be intaking more fiber or like more carbs or just in general?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So really it's the same distribution of that breakdown. The percentages, they're really the same, but what bumps up is the overall calories for men. So that's really the only thing that will change. Now I mentioned if you resistance train a lot, you have to bump up protein. And I usually do a specific calculation for someone anywhere from 1 gram to 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, and never exceeding 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, because that's more than you need and it's a big load on your kidneys. Some other special populations, like, if you're pregnant, you have to vary this a little bit. If you're sick, you have to vary this a little bit. So that's a great question. And I see another question: would a DNA test to see what diet should look like help? A DNA test, no, they're really inconclusive and they're not great tests. We don't have great tests right now. And it's so multifactorial. Like a test cannot test for how you live. you know, your lifestyle, your behavior, your food choices, your resources. So you have to factor in what foods feel good in your body, what foods perform in your body. Maybe it's best if you have 3 squares a day instead of eating 5 times a day, or maybe you like bulk of your food middle of the day. Based on your lifestyle, maybe you can't handle like a big dinner because it interrupts your sleep. I would say in most research, you know, going more plant-based, anti-inflammatory foods, what someone had mentioned, that works well for most bodies. We all have little minor intolerances with some foods. And remember, like every 5 years, our gut microbiome changes a lot, where you could tolerate a food before and you no longer can. Or like I'm sensitive now to, if I have too much, my sinuses get really blocked up. So I have to be aware of the serving sizes with cheese. And then, you know, I couldn't tolerate vinegar at one time and now I can, and I love it. So you have to really just it's about listening to your body and paying attention to the little nuances and what works. And then if you can eat within these parameters, kind of like the My Plate here, and with the percent distribution, it's important to get, I know it's boring, to get carb, fat, protein in most of your meals and snacks. So, okay, let's see another question. How effective do you think hair sample tests are for determining which nutrients you're lacking or have in excess? You know, the hair sample test will, again, not be conclusive. They will not tell you, because it's not in real time. Like a blood test will show sort of real time deficiencies. Hair was like maybe how it was months ago. Maybe it's not that way today. So you could. What I would focus on though is A, how you feel. B, if you are noticing hair, skin, nails changes, and then your blood work. So you can get a blood work workup to see if you're lacking in anything. But most people, it's I mentioned iron, vitamin D. You're not going to see, well, sometimes calcium, depends on the age. But you really have to base it on a lot on how you feel, your energy, the skin, your hair, your nails, that sort of thing. How many times should we be eating during the day? Is fasting really healthy? So it is helpful when we're up and productive to eat every 4 hours at least. To go 5 is kind of pushing it. And fasting is really healthy for our body when it's done in a non-deprivation kind of way, like using the nighttime as a natural fast, because it's really built in for circadian rhythm. Like say you stopped eating at 6 p.m. and you didn't eat again until 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. So having like a 12-hour fast at night is actually really beneficial for our body. And it helps us sleep and has cell turnover and cell cleanup. It's called autophagy. It's really helpful. But if it's tripping you up behaviorally, like you're like, oh my God, I can't eat past 6 p.m. So you shovel more food in before that time. Clearly that's not working, right? So we're humans. If we tell ourselves we can't eat or can't have something, we're going to want it more. I noticed I do a natural 12, 13 hour fast without even thinking about it, because that's just what my schedule is and it feels right. So if you have to push yourself into it and it's tripping you up, then ditch it. Within the first hour of waking, you should get something in your body. You should at least a couple hundred calories of, again, that protein carb combination. Anything else? These are good questions. Did you find this helpful?
Yeah, so we have a survey that I actually wanted to share with everyone who joined us today.
That's great.
It's just a short survey about what you guys thought of the workshop, and then if you guys want to see like more of them later on. So you can copy and paste the link. We would appreciate it a lot. And then I'm also going to be uploading the recorded version of this to our YouTube, and you can find our YouTube at our hdhwellness.ucsd.edu website, and the links will all be there. So thank you again, Miriam.
Thank you. Oh, one more question before. So for losing weight, is it more important to track macros or calories? You know, mathematically, it's definitely going to be overall calories, but I would focus on hunger and fullness, and then your balance of your meals first and the health of them before you do calories. And then you can just take a check in at the MyPlate or MyFitnessPal just to see how many calories. It's good to work with a dietitian too, so if you need help. And thank you. I'll let everybody go. But yes, please do the survey. Okay, bye everybody.